coffee, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for braving the elements to be here this morning. This is much appreciated. So I know it's a tough time for everyone. We've got so many people that are down with between the flu and the weather and everything else you can think of. That was the longest January of our lives. And I know February is only 28 days, but I have a feeling it might feel more like 45. So we'll see. So today, our speakers, really this kind of came about in an interesting way because at our last leadership class from our adult signature program, we had some discussions about a program that exists, and that's Community Counseling Center Supported Employment program. And many of our class members were unaware that this program existed and unaware of really all that it takes place. And so it was a really great tie-in with some of the needs of the community. So we thought, wow, if we can move some things around on the schedule, and if this team is available, it'd be great timing to hear from everyone. So we're really thrilled that our speakers today were able to accommodate that change in schedule. So I'm going to introduce, we've got three speakers. We've got Ginger Yanchar and Paul Bellino from Community Counseling Center. And but first, kicking things off and getting things started is Miriam Walton, who's the Executive Director of the Ashtabula County Mental Health Services and Recovery Board. And I don't know, did I get all that right? I was pretty close. So Miriam will start things off and then introduce Paul and Ginger as well. And I'm sure that it's a great opportunity for everyone to hear some of these resources that exist and to really see how that can work for you, your organization, and your company as well. So with that, Miriam, if you'd like to begin. Yeah.
First, we'll see if you can see me. I can do this too so that folks can at least see me. That's right. If you really want to. Yeah, my name is Miriam Walton, as she said, and I'm the executive director at the Ashtabula County. I'm not going to be up here very long, but Paul had asked me to kind of set the foundation for you as to how we got to supported employment, why it's important in Ashtabula County, why our board felt that it's very important to put some money into getting this program going and supporting it ongoing in order to reach recovery. So that's just our board name and our kind of our logo, our motto. One of the things our board, being the county board that is responsible for planning for services, for looking at the community, we do a lot of needs assessments, we do a lot of looking at the community. It's an ongoing process, talking to community members, people receiving services, family members. We do a lot of youth focus groups. We just do a lot of collecting data. And the whole point of that is to try to develop ourselves what we call a recovery-oriented system of care. And you see the important things that are underlined there for us are that this system is community-based and it's person-centered. So we are constantly trying to look at how can we continue to do things in the community that meet the community needs and meet the needs of our individuals that need behavioral health services, and keep that person centered so that we're meeting those individualized needs of the consumers, the people that need the services here in Ashtabula County, and their family members, and those other people that care about them. So we're about a recovery-oriented system of care. So that gets our thought process going to who are we, what are we supposed to be doing, how are we supposed to be expanding services. And so where we're at right now is our focus when we go looking at what we're going to fund and how we're going to move things forward at the board and at our board meetings is we are about prevention. We know that in mental health and substance use disorders, and especially what we're looking at with our opiate and our heroin problem right now, is we need to be about prevention. We need to get out in front of everything we can get out in front of and prevent as much as we can prevent. So we're very active in prevention. Intervention, when we work with law enforcement, we're very active with the criminal justice system, trying to do some interventions there, catching people as they go along the criminal justice system before things get any worse. Treatment, evidence-based practice around treatment, training agencies, giving agencies the tools that they need that sometimes they can't get themselves because of maybe fiscal constraints. So we do a lot around treatment and planning for treatment and looking at our continuum of care. And we do have a broad continuum of care here in Ashtabula County. We have met all of our continuum requirements for the state. Capacity might be an issue for us, but we have treatment services available and we're working on capacity. And then those recovery support services. And that's where we get into looking at things like supported employment. So I'm going to flip over. A lot of folks. So how do we get these things done? All of those treatment, intervention, recovery, prevention. What do we need to be looking at? And so our board then also took the next step to start looking at how do we reduce barriers for access. So we've done things like expand services. We now have offices in Conneaut. We're looking to try to see if we can get offices eventually in Geneva so that we can expand and decrease the barriers to access for treatment services. Increase the probability of engagement. So what are the best practices? What are evidence-based practices around engagement? We now have walk-in clinics that we funded at the agency so that people can walk in on the day they feel like it being engaged. So we can do what we can do to get them engaged, because engagement, back to that second service, is what we need to do to increase better outcomes for individuals that need treatment and promote that recovery. I wanted to add all of this using evidence-based practice. We are mandated, and we find that the best thing we can do is use evidence-based practice and to monitor those outcomes and make sure that we're doing things with fidelity. So then what are those recovery support services? The board said, okay, what are we supposed to be doing around recovery support services, and how do we hold up and support those people in recovery, whether it's on the mental health or substance use disorder side? Because both sides of our business, as we call it, people recover. We believe in recovery. We believe that treatment does work when individuals have access, when they're engaged, and when there's evidence-based practice being used to help them move through the process, just the same as someone's heart disease can often get better, or their diabetes improves if they're doing what their doctor tells them to do, they're engaged in the process, they have access to the treatment they need, and they can get the medications that they need, and they follow their treatment plan. People do recover. So what are those recovery support services? The state gives us a nice little list, so we don't have to guess what those might be. So housing is one. We're very engaged in housing. Child care, we're not as engaged, but we do take a look at child care and making sure that families do have some issues. If they do have issues with child care, how do we manage to do that? Life skills training, we have some contracts out there for individuals that can do life skills. We also do bought-in life skills with one of the hospitals through our prevention coalition, and we do a lot of stuff around life skills. We'll skip job readiness right now. Legal consultation, we often are talking about, is that part of something that we need to do with consumers? Wellness checks, looking at their physical health, because we know people with mental health disorders, their life expectancy is about 20 years less than someone who does not have a severe persistent mental illness. So what are we doing about health? Peer support, we have peer recovery supporters out there now working with some of our agencies. Mutual aid groups, you all know about those groups. We have Smart Recovery, which is a non-higher power group for individuals who choose that. And then our faith-based support groups that are out there in the community, like AA, like Celebrate Recovery. There's a lot of choices for individuals who need a sober support system. And then transportation, which we all know is really big in this county, and we work very closely to find out how can we reduce those barriers. One of the things that happens is like our quick response team will actually drive people to treatment if they need to when they've gone out to visit someone who's just had an overdose and they're trying to get them into treatment. So today, though, we're talking about that job readiness piece and how did we get to supported employment. Well, if you hear some of the things I just really quickly went through, how we're about looking at recovery supports, but we're also about evidence-based practice. And we're also about looking at the individuals that we serve and saying, how can we not just get them by today? How can we not just have them exist, but how can we improve their quality of life? How can we see them not just get by, but have a little bit of a better quality of life within the means that they have and where they're at in their recovery? And so we started looking around and said, you know what, we were doing some employment stuff that really didn't seem to get us the outcomes we wanted. So the next thing was looking for an evidence-based practice that would work, and that's supported employment. Supported employment is an evidence-based practice. And we started with, this is our evidence-based practice we'd like to put in place. We found an agency willing to take that on because it is a heavy lift. It's something that you really have to work at to get to a certain point. And you have to start looking for multiple funding streams and all kinds of things in order to support this over the long term. So once you have, and then you have the commitment of someone like Case Western Reserve who is running those programs and are willing to walk us through every step of the way for how do we implement an evidence-based practice in order to improve the lives of the people that we serve by getting them out into the business community, getting them working, but also getting them contributing again in so many different ways as a recovery support for them, but also as a way to reduce stigma out of the community, to add to the economic development of the community, because now we have a workforce coming in that we didn't have before to fill jobs that are available. So that's kind of where our board was when we moved forward with that. And we started having conversations with the Community Counseling Center pretty early on because they were willing to kind of take this on. And I know, Paul, if you want to start talking about, because we had to go through a large readiness process in order to get us to that point.
When you volunteer or work with social agencies, you hear a lot of the same language that Miriam was talking about. Pretty soon you start to glaze over, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yesterday morning, Miriam joined an emergency response team at Jefferson High School because a young man had died on Monday afternoon. And she was there along with a lot of our community members to help with the kids there that were just getting news that morning. So that's really where the rubber meets the road, I think. So thank you.
Any other questions for me about kind of how the board, our thought process through this was really to look at those individuals using kind of the bridges out of poverty language and saying, how can we just not get them by, but get them ahead? How can we actually add to some people's income, have them see a better quality of life, and support their recovery? And employment is a huge recovery support. So, Paul, would you like to take it from here?
Good morning. So I've been coming to these breakfasts for about 4 years now, and it's the first time I've been a speaker. So this is real exciting for me. And as Craig Cumberworth can attest, I risked life and limb driving here this morning. That's how important Ashtabula County is to me, even though I'm not a native. This is a great place to work and a great community to work in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of our agency. I'm going to review some services and programs, tell you my perspective on how supported employment came, and then why all this matters. So the bad news is I have a ton of slides. The good news is I talk incredibly fast. So let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of Community Counseling Center. We were initially known as the Mental Health Clinic, located on Collins Boulevard. We had a probably half-time psychiatrist and a half-time secretary, and that is where you stopped on your way back from the state hospital, most likely Massillon, Ohio, and got your medications and returned to the community. Although, unlike today's current hospital stays where you might have only been in a few days to a week, we were probably in for months to years at that point in time in the 50s and 60s. We were the first to bring mental health services to residents of the county in '61, although the IRS recognizes us officially as a nonprofit in 1964. We use that as our birthday. We've been community counseling center since 1986, when the mental health clinic merged with family services. You know this fellow, I'm sure, President Kennedy. President Kennedy signed the Federal Community Mental Health Act into law in 1963. So you see the dates. We were already doing this in 1961, but the Mental Health Act really formed what is the basis for our outpatient community behavioral health system today. I won't get too deep into the story, but some of you might know, President Kennedy's sister was institutionalized for a period of time. Their other sister, Eunice, was a huge, Eunice Shriver was a huge proponent of this bill, really pushed the president to sign this and enact this law. And Eunice also started Special Olympics. It kind of goes from there. So this is a big deal, and I'm going to circle back to this in a minute. You know who this guy is? I did speak to some high school students recently, and only one of them knew who this was. This is Lyndon Johnson. President Lyndon Johnson, who signed the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, which started the war on poverty in the country. That started the Community Action Agency process, and that is why Judith and her team are here today and moving forward with the war on poverty. And I'm going to circle back to why these two acts matter in a bit. As I said, we have been around for a while. We celebrated our 50th, according to the IRS, 50th birthday in 2014. We've been doing this a long time, and we're continuing to grow. So just a quick overview. We are a comprehensive behavioral health services provider, providing mental health and substance use disorder treatment. I did put the third bullet point there, which is dual diagnosis, which is a combination of both of those things. Eventually, it's all going to be that third bullet point. We don't have patients coming in either one or the other anymore. We treat a larger array of problem sets coming into the organization. Our core services are featured mental health, individual and group mental health counseling, mental health and substance use disorder case management, psychiatric medication management. We have a day treatment program for children that serves the county, across the county, as well as an array of substance use disorder treatment, individual, group, and intensive outpatient. We provide those services across the lifespan, adults through children through older adults. We serve over 3,000 people a year, probably more towards the 3,500, almost evenly distributed between adults and minors. We're about a $6 million annual budget, and we employ approximately 90 people currently. We are a contract agency of the Ashtabula County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, which Marion noted, and they monitor our services. We are also certified by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and we are accredited by CART International. Marion talked about evidence-based practices, and that has been a big movement over the past 4 years of our organization, is a commitment to those EBPs. So Marion used the term engagement, and I was tickled that she did that, because that is our touchstone term in our organization. That is a description of what we do and why we do it and how we do it. Talk more about in a second. But here, this is quite literally our engagement umbrella, because engagement is featured in our mission statement. Our mission is engaging the community in recovery. And you see our evidence-based practices and some of our programming fit well under that umbrella, including support, employment, and IPS, which we're here today to talk about. Just a really quick, a few of our programs at the agency. Marion noted our Access Clinic, our community care center. This has now been expanded in this fiscal year to include every hour that we're open at the agency. So now approximately 9 in the morning, and we're open until 7, Monday through Thursday, and until 5:30. And now you can come in any time during those open hours and get an assessment. It's about giving folks the treatment they need when they need it. I think for a long time, probably the majority of 50 years, we've gone on this paradigm that we will schedule appointments, and we've been very robotic because you will come in at 8 o'clock and you will see your counselor, and then when you see your counselor, you will do X, Y, and Z. That's not what treatment is. Treatment's about building relationships and building therapeutic relationships and recovery. It's not about, great, I'm going to see you next week on Thursday, and we'll discuss your depression. If you're not depressed next week, that's too bad because we're going to bring it up and discuss it anyways. That's not how the system should work. The system should be attuned to needs when people need it. And that's including our initial access to treatment. Prevention services are new. We have a prevention coordinator, Katie Morrison, who's just getting the ball rolling. And Marion is funding that service through MHRS. We have a youth and young adult and transition program, which actually Ginger supervises, as if she didn't have enough on her plate. She also oversees this program, and we are actually in the midst of a 2 or 3 day training. 3-day training at the library, using that meeting space with a national trainer that came in to provide us training in the TIP model that sustains that program. We do high fidelity wraparound in coordination with the Family and Children First Council. As I said, we have specific SUD treatment, including medication-assisted treatment, which is our ever-growing program in our organization, and our newest program, our ambulatory detox program. We can get quite a bit into a discussion today about the opiate epidemic, but the long and short of it is there are no inpatient beds for Medicaid patients in our county. If you are Medicaid insured and you need an inpatient detoxification bed, you're traveling at least 55 to 60 miles in the surrounding county to get that. Sure, that is away, that is geographically away from the problem, so to speak, but that's also removing you from whatever family system and support that you did have, and then we have to reintegrate you back into the county. We're trying to get a little more along the range of treating people where they're at, literally, where they can sleep at home in their bed and get a full day of treatment and their detox on an outpatient basis. And the one I highlighted there is support employment services, which we're here to talk about today. So how did this come? So Marion gave you a very appropriate professional story on how this came about. So those of you who might know me, I can get excitable. I told you I talk fast. I lose filters. So something comes in my head, I spit it out. And I'm super excited to hear what I have to say, and I certainly know that not everybody in the room is always excited to hear what I have to say. But that doesn't stop me, and I know that's part of my professional growth, but we're not here to talk about me today. So I'm in a meeting, and we're talking, and at some point, I must have said something about, we really shouldn't foster and encourage a system that has people living on $700 a month on disability payment. That's not going to be a growth move for the county, but it's definitely not going to be something that helps anybody in their recovery environment. That was years ago. And again, I assumed that nobody was paying attention to that. I moved on to my next topic. Get a phone call from Marion a number of months later, and she said, remember when you said that people shouldn't live on $700 a month? And I think I said, I admit that I think I said yes, but I really wasn't quite sure if I had said that. It sounded like something I would say. And I said, well, what does that mean? She goes, well, we want to move forward with something and put that idea to work and support that on the county level. So we said, sure. And MHRS invested in that program, and we really had to start from scratch. Matt Butler, one of our supervisors, and I had to start from the very beginning. We did a readiness assessment with Case Western Reserve University, and we really had to lay down the initial building blocks and start from scratch. It was overwhelming. We needed a supervisor. Lo and behold, through serendipity, we met Ginger Yanchar all the way from Lake County, and we reported her to Ashtabula County in a huge talent grab. Ginger's not one to speak about herself, but I'll tell you that Ginger's not only a regional leader in support and employment, but she's a state and now national leader because we're currently involved in a support and employment demonstration on a national basis right here in Ashtabula County. Ginger will talk maybe briefly about that. We are one of 30 programs across the country involved in that. One of the only state with multiple programs is Ohio, and there's 3. Cincinnati and Lorraine are the other areas. This is a huge deal. So I used to tell our staff all the time, hey, prepare because the world's not coming to Ashtabula County. Wrong. They kind of are, and we have a national person, a national leader in support of employment. So Ginger came to Community Counseling Center. The program grew rapidly. She built the staff, and accolades followed. I rarely mention this, but I'm going to go ahead and just talk about it anyways. We did win the Workforce Innovation Award at Best of County in 2016. We were very happy. There's Ginger there. There's me grabbing the award from Laura. I was so excited I walked off the wrong side of the stage. I ruined the pictures. And there, that's a darker picture, but there's our support employment services team, led by Ginger. There's some of our awards there, how nice. There's a plaque that James Mayer gave us that we have, how nice is that? So if you leave with one thing today, remember we are an award-winning support employment services. So why support employment matters in the short run? Miriam said it, I'll say it again. These are quotes from Sherry Walter at OACPA, which is Miriam's state organization. Treatment works and people recover. Mental health or behavioral health disorders are treatable illnesses. They are illnesses. They are not character faults. And treatment is effective. It's getting people into treatment and making sure we do it the right way that's important. Recovery is to be celebrated. Individuals in recovery can and do become active and contributing members of their communities. So in terms of support employment, let's look to improve the quality of life for everybody. I learned very quickly from Ginger that work is not the conclusion of recovery or some end goal. Work is part of the recovery process. And let's use the bottom line here. People who work pay taxes. They contribute to the economy. And if we're going to address generational poverty and the opiate crisis and severe persistent mental illness, we need all hands on deck to make that happen. So remember that JFK slide in the Federal Community Mental Health Act? Over 50 years later, put that in perspective, 50 years we're still on this process of building our community behavioral health systems. So that act was focused on deinstitutionalization and the fact that we want to support individuals to live independently in the community. We're still working on that, and actually we're in an era of post-deinstitutionalization where we've almost defunded the support efforts that work in the community, and now we're trying to build that back up. Being in the community means fostering independence, and what fosters independence like earning a wage? And support employment is a key service that not only aids in building that independence, but encourages recovery. And remember that LBJ slide? We talked about that. 50 years later, we're still waging that war on recovery, or war on recovery, not stretch that, war on poverty. And we have this I wouldn't say epidemic, but significant issue of generational poverty in our county. And some two very appropriate initiatives that are being developed through Family Children First are our Trauma-Informed Care Committee and our Bridges Out of Poverty committees. And working to get people out of, or climbing out of poverty is a struggle, but we shouldn't be fostering individuals on disability living at the federal benefit rate of $735 a month. Think about that for a second. Can you subsist on that? If you have stable housing and reliable transportation, there's nothing left of that money to live off of. But folks can work without losing their benefits, and we have benefits counselors available to guide them through that process and encourage folks that you don't have to settle for that. And you can also contribute at other levels to our economy here. And we're trying to build a culture of work. We're looking at this generational poverty, and we see this great program that Catholic Charities is doing with their Getting Ahead program through the Bridges program. And we're building a culture of work. And that includes everybody. It is not select populations that get to work. It's our people in recovery as well. We use that term engagement at our organization maybe overuse it, but it describes what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Yes, evidence-based practices matter. We need to use proven methods, but it's really the relationship that heals. Over time and again, data will show it's the relationship that helps people succeed. We're asking you, as employers in the room and beyond, to look at that engagement, and particularly that engagement with the recovery population. And not as people in recovery, but as employees that can help you. This is not about special treatment. This is about win-wins. This is about you getting reliable employees and us maximizing our recovery efforts. And with that, I'll give it to Ginger Mitchell.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? about 10 minutes to fly through my supported employment program. So I'm gonna skip some details and just get the basics in for you. You guys have some green flyers on your table, and as well as some rack cards. Feel free to take a rack card with you that gives you a little bit more detail of our program. And those green pieces of paper, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, if you either leave your business card on the table or write your contact information on one of the green sheets of paper, we would be glad to follow up and stop by and talk more about our program and how we can work together to help the workforce as well as help some folks in recovery. Actually, now I see why you guys pulled over to the side. All right. So these are some of the objectives that I'm hoping that you can take away with you today, recognizing what the benefits of partnering with a program like our SE IPS program. The IPS, I don't think we've defined that yet this morning. IPS is the type of model of supported employment that we provide through Community Counseling Center. It stands for Individual Placement and Support. That is the model that's researched out of Dartmouth, as well as they were out of Dartmouth and now they're out of Westdale, which is a research management company out of Maryland. But that's what the IPS stands for. Also, learning some ways that our SEIPS can potentially help to streamline and improve hiring good candidates and good job fits for the businesses in Ashtabula County, and being able to provide some examples of once we work together to get a good match at a business, what those follow-along supports might look like, because we don't leave once a person in recovery secures employment, we help them to secure employment through relationships with the potential employee and the business partner. We don't go away. We continue to provide ongoing follow-along support, and that looks different for every single employer and individual that we work with. So we've talked a little bit about supported employment and what it is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but supported employment, IPS, is one of the most researched evidence-based practices out there. It indicates very strong, when you apply the principles of this model with individuals with severe and persistent mental illness, significant outcomes, and we are experiencing those in Ashtabula County. I'd like to shine a couple I have to maintain outcomes and report those out to the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board and a couple other places. So every quarter I get to look at what our placement rates are, what our job retention rates look like. And in the first quarter of this fiscal year, we had 17 new people get jobs in Ashtabula County. And that was record-breaking. That was great. Last quarter was our winter quarter, holiday quarter, so the outcomes were lower than 17, but we still had 6 job placements, October, November, December, which is significant also in those months, because those are typically lower job placement rates for anybody. So we still had some success in a quarter that typically is difficult to get job placements. And then the SEIPS model now are not only looking at, they've done so much research and we see the outcomes if we apply the principles of SEIPS to folks with severe and persistent mental illness. They are now taking a look at, for anybody who's worked with somebody or knows somebody with mental health concerns, there's typically all these other co-occurring concerns that are going on, including criminal justice, folks with criminal justice involvement, substance use disorders, and just a slew of other things. So the research company out of Westdale, the SEIPS Center, they're doing a lot. They continue to do a lot more research, and including some other subgroups of folks looking at outcomes. I can say that they've done some initial research on folks with substance use disorders and mental health, as well as folks with just substance use disorders. And when you apply the principles of SEIPS, again, the outcomes are very similar to the same outcomes that you get when you apply them to folks with primarily severe and persistent mental illness.
So this is a great practice. It does work. I am not going to go through these point for point, but these are the 8 guiding principles of supported employment. When SEIPS first started back in the late 90s, there were 6 guiding principles, and as they continue to do research, they continue to identify new trends, and they've added 2 additional ones over the last 10 years or so. And the few that I just want to kind of highlight on that would apply to businesses is the 3rd one down there that says employment services are integrated with mental health treatment. So just for you to know that if you're a business working with our SEIPS program and you're considering or have placed somebody through our program, to know that when you see an employment specialist, that's just one person of probably a team of mental health providers that's working with that individual. So we're just one piece of support. And then they may have, what, as Paul was mentioning, some of our other menu of services. They might also have counseling, or they may be in case management, or they may be meeting with our psychiatrist. So we have a team of providers providing support to that person to help them be successful in all parts of their life, including work. And that we're all talking, and that person served is also part of that team. So we're all having shared conversations, celebrating together, as well as discussing concerns and treatment needs together. 2 down from that one, the job search begins soon after a person expresses interest. Both Miriam and Paul touched on the fact around motivation and engagement. So when we're working with businesses to place somebody and find a good match for somebody, we're working with an individual who is at that point of motivation and desire to work and is engaged in their job search process and really wants to be part of a workforce relationship with employees, etc. Employment specialists develop relationships with employers by learning about their business needs. Some of you in the room may have already met one or 3 of the employment specialists. We start with an initial face-to-face contact. Most of our work is face-to-face out in the community. And then over time, we'll stop in and continue to find out what your evolving business needs are. So the goal is, that one in the bottom bullet there, client preferences for jobs, those kind of tie in together because we want to learn about your business, we want to find out what your needs are. At the same time, we're talking with the person served and finding out what their job interests are and what they want to do so that by the time we're talking to you, we can kind of help to make a good match. And then the individualized job supports being time unlimited. Once a person is placed, I mentioned that, we don't go away. We find out what those individual needs are, both from the person served as well as the business, the employer, and with the consent of the person served, we will continue to have contact with the employer and the client, and that can be as intensive as on-site job support, so we come on the job, help the person through orientation, maybe they get a new supervisor, they're having interpersonal issues with another coworker, we can come on site and help intervene with that. And then the idea is that the supports ebb and flow based on the issues at hand. All right, so I am about out of time. If anybody wants to have these slides, those are the principles, and I've kind of broken it down into more detail. So hopefully you get a flavor of what our model is. We would really love to work with all of you. If you're interested in having a bigger conversation, if you could just leave your contact information, and then we can follow up and see how we can partner together to help you meet your workforce needs and us help a person in recovery be successful. I'm cruising through here because we all have to work together. If we all work together as part of the solution, we all get greater outcomes. The employers get a good matched employee. The person in recovery continues along a positive path of recovery, and we can help be part of, as an SEIPS program, can help be part of that support to help all of that happen. And those are just the summary points. So I believe I'm out of time. Yes, Laura? Can I? A couple questions? Yes.
Some folks might be aware of OODs, the kind of 90-day work. Can you actually speak to the outcomes about the
Do you want me to tie OOD into that, or just
Not
as,
necessarily,
okay,
but, you know, some folks are aware that, you know, like,
Sure. Right.
that they look at 90 days
Gotcha.
as success.
right. So Miriam just asked if I could elaborate on what that follow-along support looks like as far as time frames. Because some of you may be familiar with like Ohioans for Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities or the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation, for which we're a partner with. That organization measures success at 90 days job placement, and they measure that as a successful closure, and then the case is closed through OOD or BBR. Our program, we partner with OOD, and that's what happens with OOD at 90 days. But whether we're working with BBR or not, our program is flexible in the sense that once a person obtains employment, again, depending upon what those individual needs are, we will follow folks. Typically, on average, we continue to provide follow-along support for around a year of successful employment. But that, again, that looks different for every individual. I've worked with individuals who stayed in SEIPS for years, because if you're more severely, persistently mentally ill, your symptoms can kind of cycle around and ebb and flow, and sometimes there's a benefit to stay involved for an indefinite period. So again, it looks different for everybody, but typically we're involved with the person for at least a year.
And what's our percentage of folks that hit 90 days?
We have a great retention rate. One of the things we measure for outcomes is job retention on a quarterly basis. Last quarter, we had about 83% of our clients still working 90 days. 90 days or longer, actually. Yeah, was there a question? Yes.
Yeah, I just, you're looking for, I'm remembering one of your slides there, I guess, but you're trying to help with employment, find employment for somebody who has a serious mental illness.
Yes.
Would you define for me what a serious
Absolutely.
mental illness is?
That is a great
As opposed to
question.
a minor one,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody who is mentally healthy.
Absolutely. So I don't know if everyone heard the question, but he asked if I could define what is what is a severe mental illness? What diagnoses kind of fall into that category? So some of the more clearly defined ones would be like severe major depression, depressive disorder, or maybe even a moderate depressive disorder. Schizophrenia, folks who fall on the schizophrenia spectrum, the thought disorder, maybe they're hearing voices or seeing things or feeling things that aren't necessarily real. And then bipolar disorder or manic depression falls into that category. We also serve a lot of folks with severe anxiety disorders or post-traumatic stress disorder. Those could be extremely debilitating. So those are some of the more clear folks that we serve. What we're really looking at is their emotional, their behavioral health, is it so significant that it's interfering with their ability to look for work or maintain employment independently, that they kind of require that extra support to be successful? Yes, JP?
One of your bullet points on here is hiring incentives available to persons. What are some of those, and how, how do you go about?
Well, JP, that's another 20 minutes.
Oh,
There's just briefly, there's like work opportunity tax credits, there's federal bonding programs, and then also through OOD and BBR, there's sometimes some incentives to employers to test out clients through work assessments or work adjustments, where it's like a paid training experience for the individual, and it's an opportunity for the employer to see somebody working, like if you're a little bit hesitant to hire someone with a disability or a particular disability, I'll give you an opportunity to see them at work without making the financial commitment to place them on your payroll, and then we stay involved throughout that process. So there's a few different incentive programs. If anybody's interested, again, I'd be glad to come out and speak with you personally about those. Yes?
Yeah, one of your slides you had up that you teach life skills to, or whatever it was. Does any of that include financial literacy?
Miriam, would you like to speak to that?
What we often do is we partner with Catholic Charities, who does a great financial literacy work. And so if we have an individual that's coming through the board also works on this emergency assistance for individuals with severe persistent mental illness. If we have somebody coming through that doesn't have a payee, and maybe a payee under Social Security is not required, and we'll kind of funnel them through Catholic Charities for financial literacy. Now, in sure if there's actual financial literacy piece to that, but they teach a lot about making good choices and looking at what you do with your finances and make good choices. But we do partner very closely with Catholic Charities for those types of pieces, because we often find individuals that just need that. A lot of the folks that might come through something like supported employment are already on SSI or SSDI because of their disability and have the ability to work a little bit, and they do have a pay fees or anything like that finances for them because of their disability. And so we look at it both ways. So we try to, and Catholic Charities is a great partner to do that because we do a lot of financial literacy assistance for folks in classes and those classes.
Okay, thank you. I will stick around, so if anybody wants to ask me some more questions, you can come up and I'd be glad to discuss those with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam, Ginger, and Paul today. I think the program, there's a lot that our employers, a lot that everyone here in the room could utilize and could be applicable to your organization or workplace. So please travel safely today, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in March.